What we doing? Are you guys ready for Money Mitch? I'm excited to get into today's episode. We got another action-packed show. We're going to get into stocks that were hot, stocks that were not. We're going to definitely go ahead and touch on explaining the intraday action in the SPY. What happened and where did it go? What is going on in oil? I'm still a little confused. I mean, we are starting to go on up. So the question is, are we finally starting to see that boom that we thought we were going to see in war? Stick around, guys. We'll also talk about why I think that you guys should be watching the reopening trade and not missing it. If this is the bottom, let's go ahead. Let's get it started. Hit a big thumbs on up. Let's go. Welcome to it. Money Mitch, guys. Get it started. Flex on them, people. Let's go. Flex.
It's time for Money Making Mitch. When investors need a story, we're going to the moon. Welcome to Money Mitch, where story is everything. I'm here to find you the next opportunity. It's all about the green hands. Now we all know the bull market is here to stay. Money Mitch.
What's going on, team? How we doing out there? Hope you guys are ready. We're going to be having a great show. We're going to get into some stocks first. And like always, on Monday, we get into a big interview with the experts. That's what it's all about. We're going to get into indexing with, of course, Rahul Sharma, managing partner of Indxx. Stay tuned for that, guys. That's going to be at 4:45. We'll get into that in just a short minute. Let's dive right into the market and see what we saw today. All right, first thing we want to take a look at is the SPY, of course. Let's take a look at the overall market, see how we're trading. We'll take a look here. And if you can see here, we ripped into the close. And one of the things that I've been talking about, and even on kind of this thumbnail, you guys could see, are we finding the bottom here in the SPY? That's really the question. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing is not trying to call the bottom, right? As you guys have been seeing here, one of the things I've been saying is let's not try to call the top and bottom. Let's more react after we get confirmation. Then we'll at least have some levels to go off. I think you're getting that confirmation at least today. One of the things that I wanted to see was, could we hold even 3 days these gains, right? And so now we're really fighting on a resistance level. I'm going to actually push this on up here a little bit, closer towards the 437. So we're looking for 438s and above, below 428s. This is where we're kind of stuck in. And we actually have multiple daily levels around here. If you look back at this time when we were in January 24th and all that, you could see those supports at 428. We're stuck in between here. And the real question is, will the bulls win the battle? You know, one of the things I drew today is this trend line, and we keep fighting it. We kind of went below it. We made even a Harmy candle right here at the 2 p.m. hour. And then what do? We come right back up. So the real question is, are we going to end up into this green zone up here into the 445s, getting on up there with the overall market, or are we going to pull back below this red line and get towards that 420? We'll see what happens in the SPY. I think you got to keep on watch because there's not necessarily one way that it can go. One of the things that we're going through right now is what? Macro headlines. When we have macro headlines, we just don't know which way it's going to head, right? And so there's one thing with a micro headline where you're looking at a specific stock and you can look at a stock to see if you're going to get a catalyst again. Maybe there's earnings coming into play, maybe a new product or something like that. But when it's the overall market or macro that's affecting you, you got to be careful because, yeah, this could gap on down. So even if you are taking some attempts here, I think you're nibbling in versus taking big shots here. And that's how I would approach it. And it'd be scary too, because you've had what? A couple of days of sideways action. If you do break down on the downside, you could see some continuation. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to keep trying to roll through today. You guys in the chat, smash the like. I want to say hi to people in the chat. Miss Whitehorse, Beach Bum, Lua in the house. Wayne, what's going on, Hunt? Doctor, what's going on out there? Well, your question in a little bit. I do see a question from you. Jay Rice looking at some earning landmines today. Oof. We'll see what happens. How did PubM kind of react? I know that you're kind of calling that one out there. So let me see how that one reacted with the earnings. Looks like we're pulling back on the earnings. We'll talk all about that. Guess what, Jay? I actually am going to be having the CEO on Wednesday, guys. So stay tuned on Money Mitch. We'll be getting to PubM CEO just on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens, and we'll talk to him about the earnings. Let's get into it here and see what we saw today. Moving on up, of course, energy leading the way here, guys. And it looks like oil finally started catching that bid. We were looking at MRO to see if we were going to push here in the pre-market, and we never came back to VWAP until later in the day around 2 o'clock. I was actually looking to get into this one right out the gates, but it just never pulled back and started pushing on up there towards the 2231s, went sideways there, eventually breaking on out from that 2230s. If you could take a look here, I actually like this one a little bit better. This trade, this was on ExxonMobil. And if you're watching ExxonMobil, this actually did a red to green, recovered that hourly support, and comes back to do a nice VWAP bounce type of trade here. And I think this is important to kind of keep an eye out for. When you get those VWAP types of moves, I definitely would keep on watch. If you look here, look at this, guys. Look at this sideways action here. Nice sideways consolidation, comes right into the VWAP. And then what happens when you break above? You get a hold of that. Then it continues going. This could have been a really nice winner there in ExxonMobil with the VWAP bounce. All right, let's keep it going. What's going on, Shannon? Option printing in the house. What up, homie? Let's do it. Zotin in the house. Let's keep going. Money Mitch, you know it, Hunt. Let's go. All right, so oil kind of bouncing back today. Gold also kind of doing a little bit of a sideways action day. One thing that was interesting was the at the close volume. So you could see a lot of volume coming in there. We'll see what happens here. I mean, the SPY has been a little bit trappy, just been kind of back and forth, been going sideways here. The question is, do we finally get a breakout and continued momentum in the SPY? I'll definitely keep these on watch. And with that, let's go ahead. Let's get out of oil here. Let's talk a little bit about the reopening trades. And so I'm looking at reopening trades because, guys, I just feel it. And one thing to kind of mention is today, Amazon putting out that they are going ahead and taking off the mask mandates for all their kind of factories. And you're seeing more and more of these mandates go away from COVID. This is why I said in the beginning of January that I thought February was going to be that month for us to really kind of find these reopening trades. January would be the month where you saw significant COVID. February, you saw what? Us bouncing back, those numbers getting better. And I think March is that month where we really start seeing the rise because of what? Spring break coming and summer coming, guys. I know how spring break starts getting people going. So we're going to keep on watch to see if we can get these reopening trades to start moving. Some of the trades that you guys can be watching, of course, AAL is one of my favorites. We'll continue to watch here. If we take a look at the hourly, we've been kind of in a nice pullback trend here, holding the 17. I'm going to actually look for a rip on up towards 18, especially if we can get the SPY to continue in the kind of the ride on up that we're riding right now. CCL is another one to keep on watch. Of course, Carnival Group, when it was starting to push on up after the 7th of February, we saw a nice ride up there towards 24. Question is, do we catch the bid again? Of course, for me, I think you're watching the SPY to see if we get that continued momentum back on up. But definitely, I would keep this one on radar. Another one, Airbnb. Of course, I also like this one. We wrote it up last time, guys, making a good gain on this one. Might take another swing trade on here. The big thing for me, of course, is going to be continuing to watch if the SPY can get up to that level, or if these trades can really disconnect, and the correlation you can kind of pay attention to see if even on a down day tomorrow in the SPY, do we get up moves in these reopening trades? We'll keep these on our radar. Hilton was one that kind of led us last time, right? If we look here on the 7th, right here, I'm going to kind of draw a circle on that move. This is what really kind of drove us up towards that 160. Then, of course, we had the kind of the Russian news come in and knock us back down, really underneath those levels. And now we're reclaiming that 145 level on Hilton. I'll be watching us to kind of get that strength into it, because if we can take out 160 on this chart, I'm definitely going to be feeling bullish into this reopening trade. You see multiple highs in that area. Let's see if we come back up to the 160s and take that out for a nice rip in Hilton. So definitely keep these reopening trades on watch. You guys know how I like finding the baskets and following. Today was one of those that was interesting. Right out the back on technology, I called out the move that was interesting in solar. Within an hour to the to the market open, you were up 8% on the industry overall. And when you get 8% moves in an industry overall, we're going to pay attention to laggard types of trade. And so you guys could have been watching this right out the gates. Look for what moved fast right out the gates, right at 9:30. And then you can try to find maybe some laggard type of trade. And you can see here, JKS really pushing on up. You can see SEDG, and where's Sun? Sun was really making that move. iSun here was really making that move right out the gates and then kind of gave some of it up. This is why it's important to kind of keep these on watch. I would definitely watch when you get a whole industry move like this, especially you day traders out there. You guys are looking for momentum to jump on. I think when you see an industry move 8% right out the gates within the first hour, then you're seeing a bunch of the whole industry kind of move into that green. Definitely take a look at those baskets because we can definitely trade them. Good day for solar if you were able to grab that. Hope somebody was able to pay attention to our live trading stream when we called out that industry move. You guys know how I love paying attention to industries. And up next, we're going to be getting into all about the industries and knowing the different baskets. It's all about Indxx, right? You guys see me take a look at this all the time where I work backwards from the sectors to the industries, then to the stocks. We're going to talk all about why that's important coming up next with Indxx. So you guys stick around. Up next, we're going to be getting into our interview here. We got our interview with Rahul Sharma, with the managing partner of Indxx. Stay tuned, guys. We're going to jump right into that interview coming on up. Hit the like button. Let's go, guys. Show some support.
When you want to maximize your performance in the market, you need access to the highest quality tools and news available. Benzinga Pro stands out from all of the options you'll be presented with, and their instant access to market-moving news positions you to be prepared to take on the market in the best ways possible. Here's how it works. Benzinga Pro's news desk creates original news content that's available on your main news feed and gives you actionable information about companies you may want to invest in. This news desk information gives you the chance to beat the market, receive impactful news as it breaks, and jump on trending stocks before and as they rise. And beyond that, Benzinga Pro is packed with helpful features and unique insights that give you the best information possible. There's tools like Live Audio Squawk, which streams every day with important news and timely updates, and the real-time news alerts that allow you to stay on top of every developing story you're keeping tabs on. Alerts and news will be sent straight to your inbox or delivered as live sound alerts. For those investors that want real-time, actionable, and breaking news about companies they may be looking to invest in, Benzinga Pro is the tool to use.
All right, traders, let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it. Joining me here, Rahul Sharma, the managing partner at Indxx. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mitch.
Definitely. I'm sure you probably heard a little bit of what I kind of do on this show. I always love to work backwards, looking at the macro, looking at the bigger sectors, and then working my way backwards into industries and trying to find trends. That's what I love to do here on Money Mitch. So we're going to dive right into it. Before we get into kind of talking a little bit more about specific Indxx, I'd love to talk a little bit about what the differences are between indexing and ETFs. Can you give us an in-depth look?
Sure. A very simple explanation is when you see an ETF, you'll either see an active ETF or a passive ETF. An active ETF is, as the name suggests, an ETF where the manager is actively picking names within that fund. A passive ETF is tied to an index, meaning the manager is simply attempting to replicate the performance of the underlying index. So a lot of times with a passive ETF, you will see the index attempts to replicate the performance of XYZ index, and that's what it's trying to achieve, is exposure to that.
Excellent. So, of course, one of the things is we're seeing all different types of ETFs being brought out now. One of the things that I always like to pay attention to is indexing. I don't know if you saw on mine. Mine has already some indexing that comes from the charting. But let's talk a little bit more about what you guys do. How do you guys construct or select the indexes?
Yeah. So it really depends on what you start with in terms of an investment thesis. It all goes back to that. So it depends again on the index. If you're trying to achieve just a broad-based exposure, something as simple as we want to create an index on all of the companies in the United States above a certain market cap. But then you can get more granular. You can look at what are called factor indexes. So excluding companies or selecting them based on a specific factor, let's say momentum, growth, or value. And then you could do something a little bit more unique, which is one of the areas in which we specialize, which is what we call thematic indexing. That's building an index that focuses on a specific theme. A good example of that would be, for example, right now, US green infrastructure. So what we'll do there is we'll understand where green infrastructure is today in the United States, how it got there, and where it's potentially going over the next 7 to 10 years. We want to focus on things that are usually disruptive and transformative from a big picture perspective. So US green infrastructure is one example, but we have others as well. We have a very popular metaverse index, which is expected to be launched as an ETF here in the United States shortly. We have robotics and artificial intelligence. We have cloud computing, cybersecurity. So those are themes. And then from that theme, you try and identify the companies that are usually generating more than 50% of their revenue from that specific theme. So in our robotics and artificial intelligence index, you have companies that are all over the world that are generating a majority of their revenue from robotics or artificial intelligence.
Perfect. I love the way that you approached it, and also giving us that half the revenue, right? And focusing on is it a major part of the business or not, right? I think that's definitely important, especially when we start talking about the metaverse. That's one thing that I'm really starting to dip my toes here. I call myself sometimes Meta Mitch, but I'm focusing on it because I myself am dipping my toes and going into these metaverses to kind of learn it. And I'm taking a deeper look at it and more an investor, but there's definitely, the gamers out there that are looking at it as an experience, a life experience. And so let's talk a little bit more about, I did see that you guys are creating the index for the metaverse index. And what are the sub themes that would be included here?
So we've got a couple of sub themes. And first of all, as an aside, let me say for any gamers out there who are watching, I'm sure they're very happy that investors are finally paying attention to their universe and their interests. I think as gamers, and you're probably a gamer as well, and I am too. We grew up playing video games. We always knew how great the video game community was and how it was doing a lot of cutting edge things. And I think now with the metaverse, people are finally starting to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So,
a quick comment on that. I know that you were probably like me when we were young. We got the answer back that video games didn't really make us some money, right? I mean, that's how it was when we were growing up. I think this is the major change here now, right? The economical attachment to the whole metaverse.
Well, you can just ask anybody who owned Activision Blizzard before Microsoft's acquisition for almost $70 billion. I'm sure they made a lot of money from video games.
That's for sure.
So with our metaverse index, what we're trying to do is we're again trying to achieve exposure to companies that are going to be focused on the growth and helping achieve the growth in the metaverse. So we're looking at a couple of different areas, sub-themes as you correctly called them. First is intellectual property and content. So these are companies that are developing the content, the software, the services that are going to be used in augmented and virtual reality. So this could be companies that are creating video games, as we've been talking about, but also 3D modeling, software, media content, graphic design tools, those types of areas. The next area we're looking at are what we call optics and display. These are companies that are manufacturing the displays, the controllers, and the interfaces that we're using in order to interact with the metaverse through our VR devices. We're also looking at platforms. So obviously platforms are a big aspect of it. These are companies that are providing the platforms to allow us to access the metaverse and that virtual reality. It could be something as simple as a video communication platform or, of course, a virtual world. But there's different ways to go about it. We're also looking at payments. Obviously, capitalism is going to be a big part of the metaverse. So we want to allow companies that are integrating payment gateways into the metaverse. And also NFTs as well that can be used in virtual reality. And finally, we're looking at the real back end. So we're looking at the semiconductor manufacturers, the hardware manufacturers, the 5G providers that are going to allow us to interact with the metaverse as well. So at the moment, we've got 50 companies in that index on a global basis. We built that index and it's been launched, one version of it in South Korea, and it's done quite well. And it's expected to launch shortly here in the United States as well as an ETF.
Well, we'll definitely be looking out for that. Now, one of the things that I've been watching too in the metaverse is that in the kind of the adoption of AR, VR, right? I think this is the real focus this year. I feel like, we've had a lot of talks about that. And now I think we're actually going into practice and we're getting new goggles to be coming out in summer by Facebook. I know that's going to be, or should I say Meta. We'll definitely be watching how these AR and goggles keep coming. I think that's what we need to be watching, right? The technology and how it develops, so to see if we can really get into the metaverse, right?
Absolutely. I think it's important for people to step back and take a look at the big picture. As an index provider, when we're deciding what types of themes we want to target, we always look at the big picture and we're trying to see things that are going to be transformative and disruptive, ideally on a global scale over the next 7, 10, 20 years. The metaverse is one of them. One of the things I will say is that we've been in this business now of building unique thematic targeted indexes for more than 10 years. And a lot of times you'll see hype that starts out at the beginning. You'll see a lot of things in the press, and you'll see quick growth. A good example of that is with our blockchain index, which we launched back in 2017. But frankly speaking, the real progress and the work happens over time. And a lot of times it'll take a few years for that progress to really start to bear fruit. And that's what we've seen with, for example, our blockchain index. We're starting to see the blockchain percolate into so many different areas, so many different sectors and industries globally. Real estate, finance, banking transactions. I mean, the SWIFT transaction system has been in the news a lot lately, and it's very effective on a global basis. But the SWIFT system has significant drawbacks that blockchain technology really solves. So I would say to anybody out there who's watching, yes, the metaverse is very exciting today, and I know a lot of people are talking about it, but it should be something that should be paid attention to over the next 7 to 10 years and not just over the next 3 to 6 months.
Excellent. I think that's important definitely to mention. Let's get into kind of what you're mentioning also about the infrastructure trend and moving into that. One of the things that I've been talking about is at least I feel for the adoption of EV, one of the things that I feel consumers really need is autonomous. I think autonomous is really that driver to get the consumer to really step on up versus a gas powered vehicle. So how are you guys seeing the infrastructure trends here, whether it's be charging networks, the grid overhaul, biofuels? There's so much here. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are seeing in that index.
So we've had a number of indices over the last 7 years that have focused on green energy, specific sources of clean energy and renewables, and also climate change in general. But what we've done recently is with President Biden, when he was running for president, when he hadn't even been elected yet, he had put out a roadmap of the areas he wanted to focus on with regard to green energy and an infrastructure bill. As you and your viewers know, that bill was passed and signed into law. And as part of it, there's a number of things in that law, but there are significant investments in green energy, green infrastructure. A very simple example of this is in 2019, according to some research that our team found, the market for EV charging was around $3.8 billion in the United States. What the bill and the law have done is Congress themselves are going to be investing $7.5 billion to build out the nation's first ever national network of EV chargers. But that's only a portion of the expected growth, because the growth is expected to go from 3.8 billion in 2019 to 25.5 billion by 2027. So the congressional allocation and the amount of money that the government's going to be spending is only a portion of that. And I would say, just to tie it back to kind of long-term disruptive trends, if you look at automobiles in 1900, there were fewer than 8,000 automobiles in the United States in 1900. There were no gas stations. Gas was something you would have to go to a drugstore to buy. And 20 years later, which is really the blink of an eye, you had millions of vehicles, infrastructure built out throughout the United States, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of gas stations. So that's what we expect to happen for electric vehicle infrastructure over the next 7 to 10 years. And, all the estimates that are out there for the United States show that a vast majority of vehicles over the next 20 years are expected to be EV vehicles, and that's all going to need infrastructure too and investment.
Definitely. Now, one of the things that I notice is that, of course, with an index, you're going to have a little bit, sometimes even more stocks than you'll see in sometimes ETFs. On average, how many stocks would you say are in one of your index?
Yeah, so for our US Green Infrastructure Index, we're taking the top 50 companies by market cap, so the 50 largest essentially, that are generating more than 50% of their revenue from one of 7 different sub-themes. EV is part of one of those sub-themes, but there's a lot of other sub-themes within that index, right? If you look at what's going to happen from a green infrastructure perspective, there's not just EV and transportation, there's also the energy aspect of it. There's also the fueling aspect of it, like hydrogen. There's also infrastructure and equipment. There's reducing pollution, so pollution controls, waste management. Here in New York, for example, composting has become a big part of the conversation. And construction, right? I mean, we all live in homes. In many cases, a lot of the homes in the United States are decades old, and those are going to need a retrofit. Here in my own building in the United States, where I live, in New York, which is not that old, they installed over the last few years a cogeneration plant, which cost a few $1 million, as well as upgrading boilers and energy efficiency systems. So what we're seeing just there from one data point is that the global green construction market was $264 billion in 2019. By 2027, so 5 years from now, that's expected to be over $600 billion. So we are expecting to see, again, a lot of transformative, disruptive things that are happening in the infrastructure space. Now, most of our thematic indexes, because we are trying to keep it pretty tight, have between 30 and 50 pure play names, because we want to get, again, the pure play companies that are getting the exposure from these themes. And we want to have it be the bigger ones, because usually it's the bigger ones that are able to move the needle the most in terms of adoption and change.
Perfect. Now, the last question I have for you is just maybe something that our viewers are missing, or maybe investors are not really paying attention to because maybe their eyes are drawn some other way in the headlines. Or do you see any trend out there that's growing that maybe investors are just not catching?
There are so many exciting things that are happening on a global human civilization basis, right? You look at where we are right now, right? We're having this conversation. 10 years ago, this couldn't have happened, right? There would have been a lag. I could have this conversation with you on my phone today from the top of the mountain in India, for example, which wouldn't have happened. So I would say, we are building out a very comprehensive suite, and we have built out a very comprehensive suite of thematic indexes, but it's more than just technology. There are things, and I think we interact with technology on a daily basis, so it's top of mind. And I think that will start to happen when it comes to green transportation, for example, and green energy. But there's a lot of things that are happening in the medical space, in the biotech space, CRISPR technology. You look at the vaccinations that have happened through messenger RNA for COVID. I mean, that was something that didn't exist 5 years ago. And the changes that are going to happen in our lives from a medical perspective over the next 7 to 10 years are going to be absolutely incredible. We're going to have customized medicines that are able to not only treat disease, but that will be able to cure diseases that were previously untreatable. So I would say, don't be too focused on just one area. Broaden your horizons and take a look at what's happening in the world. Look out your window and really think about, how are things going to change over the next 10 or 20 years.
Love it. I definitely agree. One of the things is I'm always looking at what's going to come. And I think that's the one thing that investors always need to be looking forward. It's not necessarily what is today, but what's going to come, like you said, 5, 7 years out. What are we building towards? What are the goals of also kind of overall, right? What are we looking towards? We're looking towards that EV movement. And then there's so much more that's going to be based off of that. So I love that you came on today. Appreciate you coming on here, guys. Interview with Rahul Sharma here, the managing partner at Indxx. I also threw up the link in the chat. If you guys want to check out some of these Indxx, there's over 100. I was going through some of them, just trying to maybe base some questions, and I was so impressed that I was like, all right, well, I need to go on through these a little bit more. And you guys know how I love finding the baskets and looking at indexing to really kind of base when do we really get these industries to move? Because one of the things that I always see too is that there's waves to this game. I'm sure you see this, Rahul, that sometimes you'll have a wave where the index is moving on up, and then there'll be times where it comes back down and comes back into favor. I think that's what we do as traders, trying to work and find that. So I thank you for doing the hard work for us sometimes and getting those indexes out there.
Thanks for having me on, Mitch. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Rahul. We'll get you back on. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. I'm going to give one last thing before I get on out of here. I want to show you guys my live action trade on AMC. Took a little scalp there today. I was confused in the market today, and I very rarely am to the point where I'm a little stomped. And so today was one of those days where I put my cash in my pocket and I set it on live trading. You know what? I might take one trade, might take a simple trade just to, if a pattern shows on up, I might take that, but I'm not going to be going into too much because right now I'm a little confused. And I always stick to that quote that says, hey, the market can definitely stay longer irrational than we can stay solvent. So today was one of those days where I put my money in my pocket and went after a trade on AMC. I'm actually show you guys the actual clip here so that you guys can see this. Let me go ahead and share it with sound here. Boom. You guys can hear me take this trade. Here it's setting on up for a breakout here. 5-minute pattern, 15-minute pattern, also 1 hour pattern. That's when I usually like it, guys, when you get multiple time frames to line on up. It's through the $18 level that you can see the breakout. I could play this for a little scalp here with the apes if I wanted to. It's not a bad little setup if you wanted to take it. So what you try to do is I would try to be on the bottom of the range. That's closer to 775 than 1790s because you could get a dip towards support and then get stopped out in the stock go even through your level. But I always talk about how when you get through VWAP 3 times, if you can hold VWAP on recovery, which is trying to do literally this second, it's a really bullish move. So now you could use that 775 level as your entry there and 775 level as your risk there, looking for it to hold after it's tried to break down 3 times.
And Zunaid, Kevin answered you, and he was quite specific. Let me go ahead and my thing's all screwed up here. Moving average ribbon.
All right, guys. So that's how I was setting up the trade here. I end up taking the trade here. I'm going to actually draw it on out for us here so that we can see it. I'm going to skip forward a little bit so you guys can see me entering that trade, and I'll explain it all in 1 second here. Here you guys see me actually in the trade now. And looking
break VWAP.
Looking, I added on the back break of that 18, so we're looking for that continued momentum.
Remember, it also comes into the multi-time frame trade, right? And so the 5-minute
There you
chart,
are.
look how this is looking now. This is a bullish engulfing
This is great.
setup now. And if you look at the 15-minute, what do you get? You get a flag pattern, right? Nice flag pattern. If it gets to the high of 1810s, you can continue making momentum moves. So we're going to look to break through that 10 right now and sell out some into this momentum. There was a big order that just went through there. Let's see the push there. There's the push that I expected with that big order. Boom.
Nice.
Just got
Nice
it out
call
there,
out, man.
1818. All right, guys. All right, guys. So that's going to be the trade there. Let's talk a little bit more about exactly what I saw. So I'm going to go ahead and share my chart here so you guys can see that trade. I should be wrapping on up here in about 2-3 minutes here, guys. So definitely, please give me the like button, guys, because I'm staying overtime to do this AMC trade and explain it for you guys. So we got it in there, right? And it started testing down the risk. One of the things to always look for is potentially you getting these kind of bids that go through your risk, but they don't really close some shares. My risk here was at the 85, but one of the things that you did see is what it started spreading right there, and you started seeing a lot of volume getting filled between right here, the 87s and 81s, 87 and 81. So I had my finger right on the trigger to get out right here on this candle here at 1781. Then it kind of reversed and reclaimed the VWAP. When you see that reclaim of VWAP, after the 3rd time to break it down, that's the 4th time. Anything below that VWAP, it should probably break through there. So from that point on, we could hold at that VWAP, and we want to continue to just let the momentum work. That's what we did in this trade. We sold into the first push into the high of the day. Then we're looking for that continued momentum up to the 1870s. It actually turned around here a little bit there, and I ended up getting out the rest of it at 1843s. But 1841 on the rest of it. But it gave me the opportunity to get this big trade up there towards 1870s. This one eventually went past 19, all the way up there towards 1925. So you could have been riding the trend all the way up there. I got some of the trade, not all the trade, but that's how it is, guys. You're not always going to get it all. The big thing is just trying to pay attention to the pattern, being objective, taking it off of a level, letting it work, selling some of the move into it, and then just from that point, taking the emotions out of the trade, which is the hardest thing. That's why I like to pay myself. Some people like to take full outs on that position. Really, it doesn't really matter. The key here, I think, is always when you're taking rewards, if you could see the continued momentum working, then yes, you can kind of stay into the trade with that full sizing. But it's always going to be a subjectiveness there in your strategy. Find what works best for you. Look at your strategy and rewind. Look at that. Look at your data.
Would I have done better selling into one move or selling into multiple moves, rewards on up? I like to scale on out, but it's always about what you guys like the most. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Sounds like you had the level 2 open, didn't see it. Yes, one of the things is I have multiple windows. I have 4 windows. So I'm looking at the level 2 also, and the time and sales on the right-hand side. I talk about this on live trading with Benzinga all the time, how I think it's very important to be watching that time and sales in level 2. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow right here on Money Mitch. Stay tuned, guys. We got a great week for you guys. We got Pub M CEO on Wednesday. We're going to keep going through it, bring more experts. If you guys enjoyed today's experts from Indxx, please let us know in the comments after. I want to keep bringing on some different perspective. It's not just about my perspective here on Money Mitch. I want to get you guys the experts that really kind of see the market the way that I mean, we need some experience, right? So one of the things that I'm trying to do is bring those experienced experts right here on Money Mitch. Please let me know if you guys enjoyed today's show. Hit a thumbs on up and hit me up in the comments if you guys got a stock you guys want me to check on out. Maybe it's a deeper story. Maybe you guys want me to do a deeper dive on a stock. I will let you guys know. I'm trying my best to reach out to DM, Desktop Metals CEO, also working hard to get us some more value right here on Money Mitch. Hit the thumbs on up, and I'll see you next time, guys. Let's keep battling. And like always, there's never one way to this market. All you got to do is try to battle, develop your system, check your system, and always be able to adapt as a trader. I think that's important. Today was one of those days that you saw me make one trade, but also stay away from other trades. I mean, there was a great trade on BTU that I could have taken, but I didn't. I was a little bit hesitant, and that's okay. It happens sometimes. Look at that trade on BTU off the VWAP, coal play. This is one that I've been watching for a while. Great trade today. Hope someone was able to nail it. That's going to do it for us right here on Money Mitch. Until then, guys, smash the thumbs on up. I'll get you guys over to a webinar now. And like always, catch us on Live Trading with Benzinga, 9:05 a.m. Eastern. We got Ryan, Zunaid. Zunaid loves taking some YOLOs. So if you guys are some options traders, check it on out. He had a great options trade on Square today. So if you didn't catch that, go catch it on Live Trading. See you next time, guys. Smash that like. Let's keep it going. Flex a little bit on them.
Check.